Okay. You ready?
Okay. So this is January 5th, 2021 meeting of the Town of Signal Mountain Personnel Committee. It's being held via Zoom as allowed by executive order of the governor. We are live streaming and the video will be available for future viewing on the town's YouTube channel, Signal Watch. Since this committee doesn't currently have a chair, I'll call the meeting to order and do roll call, and then we'll do some general introductions and then move into election of officers unless the body chooses to postpone that action. So for the record, in roll call, Elizabeth Baker.
My space bar is not working here.
Kathy Corley. Callan Pearson.
I'm present.
Angie Bandy.
Here.
And Joe Durrett.
Here.
Okay. I think I got everybody. There is a little bit of a delay when you unmute. So you'll pause just for a bit. If it's a short answer like that does tend to help. So I guess if you guys want and don't mind, it is a little awkward to do it in this way with staring at a screen as opposed to being able to sit around the table and actually talk to people. But Elizabeth, we'll start with you. Just kind of want to introduce yourself, and we'll move around the screen as you appear in mine anyway.
Okay. My name is Elizabeth Baker. I'm new here on the Personnel Committee. I am excited to work with so many people that have such great experience, and I think that the Personnel Committee is really important. I have about 17 years, 18 years experience working with advocacy issues with local governments in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Tennessee. And I've owned 4 businesses, and as a small business owner, of course, you know, you wear many hats, including personnel. So I've got some experience there too. But that's who I am.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Corley. I worked for a number of years as a human resource generalist in healthcare systems. I'm excited to be here. Look forward to getting a little bit more involved in serving the town, and look forward to working with all of you.
Helen. It's one of our veterans.
Right. I'm on my second term with the committee. In between, I have done a career change from an operations management into civil engineering. So it's a bit of a change, but I do have experience with personnel in my previous career, and I enjoy serving on this committee. So thank you.
Angie.
Hi, I'm Angie Bandy, and we've been in Signal Mountain for about 12 years, and my work history is all in different aspects of human resources, mostly in more of the retention stage, but looking forward to working with you all.
Great. And Joe.
Yeah, this is Joe Durrett. I previously served on the board before. I served on a lot of charity boards, and I've got my own charity called Moms Remembered, and I've got a number of businesses that I own. So I've got some experience in setting up policies and monitoring them, and making sure they're adhered to.
Okay.
That's about it.
All right. Generally, the first meeting of the year for a committee includes the election of officers. In this situation, we do have several new folks, so I will leave it to the committee to discuss how you want to approach that. How that's done is not stipulated, except that, especially in this scenario where we're meeting electronically, all matters have to be voted on by roll call. So I'll leave it to you guys to decide how you want to approach that.
May I suggest to the other committee members that we maybe look at who wants to do the secretary position first so that they can keep a record of everything that happens after that?
I like that idea. Is anyone interested in it?
This is Joe. I also think that's a good idea.
Is this where we start drawing straws?
Maybe the better question is, anyone willing to do it?
Hey, Boyd, I'll go ahead and volunteer for that position.
Thank you very much. So we have, Callan has offered to take the secretary's position. I guess without objection, the cleanest way to do it would be for someone to make a motion for that appointment, get a second, and then we'll do a roll call. And then from that point, she can take care of it.
I will make the motion for Callan to be the secretary of the personnel committee.
I'll second that.
Was that Angie?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on that matter? Okay, we'll do a roll call then. Elizabeth Baker,
Yes.
Catherine Corley,
Yes.
Callan Pearson,
Yes.
Angie Bandy,
Yes.
and Joe Durick.
Yes.
Boyd, if you don't mind, Callan, I kept notes up until now and I'll send them to you.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, that leaves chair and vice chair. You guys are masters at awkward silence.
Could we get a recap of those who already have experience on this committee, please?
Callan and Joe Durick have
Okay.
both served. And I will say, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, after I communicated with you guys that this is something that we would be addressing on the agenda, Joe indicated in an email to me that he would be interested in serving as chair, but I don't know if that he continues to have that interest but I'll throw that out there as an icebreaker. Are you with us, Joe?
Yes, I still would be interested in it, although, you know, I just don't want it to be because I served before, but I'm interested in, because I've served on a number of boards, and I kind of know how meetings are run. And I'm also done a lot of research prior with the personnel and knowing what the responsibilities are. So that's the only reason I had volunteered. We've got a lot of good people here, so I just volunteered knowing that anybody that would serve would do a great job. You still there?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I forget you can't see us nodding our head.
Oh, no, it's, I'll tell you, I'm not an expert in Zoom by any stretch of the imagination.
All right. So we have one person that's voiced interest. Absent anyone else who would want to put their name in the hat, then I think we would follow the same process and see if there's a motion.
This is Angie Bandy, and now I'd like to nominate Joe for our chairperson.
I will second that nomination.
Any further discussion? Okay, Callan, you want me to go ahead and do the roll call on that, or do you want to run it?
I'll go ahead and run it.
Okay.
Go with Angie Bandy,
Yes.
Joe Dirk,
Yes.
Elizabeth Baker,
Yes.
Catherine Corley.
Yes.
Did I miss anyone on that?
Yourself.
Oh, Callan Pearson. Yes.
Okay. Joe, that installs you as chair. Do you wish to go ahead and handle the vice chair process, or do you want me to do that?
If you could do that, that would be appreciated.
Okay. So third time through, we know the drills. Anyone interested, willing to serve as vice chair, or anyone brave enough to just nominate somebody else and go from there?
Since the three of us are new to the committee, is there a general overview of the opportunity?
Generally, obviously the vice chair would just serve in Joe's absence, but for the most part, it will be just administrative duties of running the meetings and perhaps ensuring that agenda communications and stuff like that are out if necessary. For the most part, the staff will handle pretty much all of that.
Angie, would you like to serve as vice chair? Instead of just nominating you right out, I'll ask first.
I will support the committee in that role, if you'd like.
Then I would like to make a motion for Angie Bandy to be vice chair.
And I will second that.
Hey, is there any other discussion? All right, Callan, if you would do a roll call, please.
All right, Angie Bandy,
Yes.
Joe Dirk,
Yes.
Elizabeth Baker,
Yes.
Catherine Corley,
Yes.
and I, Callan Pearson, say yes.
All right. That was relatively painless. All right. Joe, if you'd like, I can just kind of work through the agenda, and there are a few specifics I'd like to cover, but a lot of it is kind of introduction and orientation to our compensation plan and personnel policy and stuff like that. So if you want, I can just kind of walk through that.
Yeah, that would be a very good idea.
Okay.
Lloyd, I just wanted to mention, I do have all of the documents that you sent out. I have those available to pull up on screen if need be. So just let me know.
Great. That might be helpful. To that point, do you guys have access so that you can see these documents where you are, or would it be particularly helpful if we did pull them up on screen?
I'd like you to pull them up on screen just so we don't have to go back and forth.
Okay.
Zoom in here.
You can do that. I'm one of the old paper people, so I always like to know which preference we have. So Sam, if you would pull up the pay structure, I guess just from the start, that original, the administration page will be fine. It will work to help illustrate. So this, each department or function is separated out in the pay structure. Here in administration, it not only has the people that are actually in the administrative department, but all of the department heads are listed as well, even though they are also included in other departments. If you would, I guess for now, Sam, if you will go to the fire or police page, the most inclusive, that's good. So we have, when you say minimum, that's obviously just that. If we were to hire in a firefighter with no experience and they were not certified, then they would come in at minimum. If they have been through the fire academy, have requisite certifications and all of that, but they don't have full-time professional firefighting experience, they would come in at a P1. If they are certified in all the areas necessary and they have at least 3 years of professional experience, then they would hire in at P2. So then from there, each of the additional steps to market are basically 1 year. So if we hire somebody in and they've been through the academy but don't have any experience, they'll come in at a P1. After a year of good performance, we get a letter from a memo from the fire chief, says they're performing acceptably, and they move to P2. And then a year later, same scenario, and they move to market. Once they get to market in whatever position it is, then from there, the pay increases are determined by council at the time of the budget. This was a change we made several years ago. We had, especially in fire and police, but in other departments, somewhat of a revolving door, in that we were hiring people in, getting them trained, getting experience, and they were being hired away almost immediately. So this is a way to get folks in and expedite them up the pay scale to that market, which is intended to be competitive wage for someone who has some experience and training and hopefully be able to keep employees. Periodically, we review this. Year before last, I believe we did a 5% adjustment on it, and all the wages were adjusted 5% for employees as well. Pretty much for the last several years, that's what we've done in terms of raises. They're cost of living or market adjustments, and that's all we've really done in just an effort to stay somewhat competitive. We're in a position now where we're seeing that that's becoming a problem again. We are losing some folks and having some difficulty hiring, even with there being significant unemployment and underemployment in some areas. Most of the fields that we need to pull people from and into aren't really experiencing that. We've been advertising for a finance clerk for a few weeks now, and we're literally not even getting any applications. And we are seeing that in areas like fire and police, we are starting to become less competitive in our wages. So that's how the plan works, the structure works. If someone is promoted from one level to another, a firefighter goes up to engineer, and they've been here for a while and they're already up on the engineer scale, then generally we will look at a 5-6% raise and slot them in there. Because obviously they can't go back down to minimum when they moved up to a more responsible position. So any questions about just generally how it works and where we are with it?
A couple of questions, Boyd. So your market rate, is that set to a certain percent of the range? Or is that set as your median or average? How are you setting the market?
The market is where we try to look at two things periodically in say for fire and police, we look at what other people are hiring in at and how quickly they move people up to a comparable position. I'm sure you all know that you can look at 15 different companies or municipalities and they'll call it at least 10 different things. You might find some similarities, but you know, the terms they use and exactly how they do it is going to vary a little bit. So we try to look at those things of where they bring people in at in terms of pay range, and then where they settle in to what we call a market. So periodically, at least every couple of years or so, we try to look at that and see how we compare to area agencies. Literally, it may have been yesterday, actually, we just got in, I mentioned to you guys in the email that we participated in a Burris Thompson survey. We've done that with them before for basically as many municipalities in Tennessee as will participate and counties. And this year they did specifically a public safety survey, and that just came in yesterday. Took longer to get than I had hoped, but that just came in, and the fire and police departments have done an in-house survey as well. So I'll get that out to you guys. We can look those over and work on the next meeting. That was a lot to answer, probably a simple question, but that's what we try to look at. Can we get people in the door with a competitive rate? And that's why we set up the P1 and P2. So if they're already certified and they have some experience, we can bring them in higher. And then we try to keep the market at least competitive with area agencies. One of the problems we have is generally you're going to compare to comparable organizations, but we're actually competing with significantly larger organizations with Chattanooga and the Sheriff's Department and all that. So we have to kind of take a little broader look at it. So that's what council specifically asked us to look at fire and police, and we've done that, and just now got the results from the Burris Thompson in. But in the meantime, I think we've identified the fact that we may need to look at it in a more broader view because we're having issues in other areas as well.
Well, and certainly if you're experiencing turnover and a difficulty recruiting, it's reasonable to start thinking about pay. Just because you've been advertising for so long and not getting any hits, are you using Indeed? Where is it that you're advertising?
I know specifically I'll say I know. I'm pretty sure we even put it out on Indeed. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I just spoke briefly with the finance director today. And I'm pretty sure that's the biggest venue we've ventured into, and hasn't done any good. We've been using that for most all of our positions, and we're seeing that we get in other positions we're getting a lot of applications, but oftentimes we can't get them to respond because it appears that they're just applying because they have to apply and largely don't have qualifications, and if they do, sometimes they're not in fact interested in the position.
I think kind of on that same thread, there's a lot of school recruitment tools that are free or very low cost to employers that you guys might want to look into. There's an organization that UTC uses that is Handshake. Chattanooga State also has some kind of job career office to help their students. I mean, those are definitely places that you need to reach out to people would be happy with this pay because they're fresh out of college.
Right. And we have looked in the past, we have used when we were considering whether or not we would be keeping the water utility. We had a utility clerk position, and we went to a temp service, which ultimately worked out and ended up hiring the person. But in this scenario, we've contacted them and just talked to them about it, and they, just reviewing the information, suggested that was likely our issue was pay. And so if we end up having to raise the pay anyway and then pay their fees on top of that, that could be an issue. So we want to take a look at it. Luckily, right now, we actually have the person who retired from that position coming in and working some, but they're limited in what they can work because they are drawing pension. So we're managing, but I'll talk to the finance director tomorrow about what else she has done and what we may be able to do in the meantime. A couple of things specifically that we're kind of in the middle of and wanted to cover with you guys. Sam, if you would go to the water.
I'm sorry, it's going to take me just a second. I didn't specifically have those things pulled up.
The, I'm talking about just the water department sheet on the
Oh, I apologize.
pay scale. Should have been more specific.
Oh, that's my fault.
We've had a meeting with council in their role as the water utility board and gone over this already, but I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of somewhat of a restructuring. When we determined we were gonna keep the water utility, and ultimately the decision was made to bring in a new director. And we basically brought them in, and the person that was the director slotted into an assistant director's position. And that person has now retired. So we restructured to make the transition as palatable as possible for the existing personnel. We had good people that just, we needed someone with a higher degree of technical skill and administrative ability. So we structured things so that no one was really hurt by that process. And ultimately, as I said, the assistant director has now retired. So since he's had some time in to familiarize himself with staff and everything, the director has recommended that we basically make that assistant director's position inactive. He doesn't want to fill that position. So we'll be looking at more operational staff. That will be a very significant savings in the budget. And we'll be moving basically a skilled labor position into a new position of field representative that will be slotted in at about that WAT4 level, along with the heavy equipment operator. It is a different type of skill, but comparable skill level. They'll be managing all of the automated meter systems and data collection and all of that, and basically be the face of the utility in the public, handling all the inquiries, meeting with customers and all of that. So, and then instead of, we also have an opening for a water laborer. So instead of filling an assistant director's position, we're going to move someone up into a more responsible role with the new automated system and fill a laborer and skilled laborer position. So we're organized better for actual operations and with less cost in the administrative side of things. So ultimately, even with making the adjustments and everything, that will be a significant budget savings, and I think improve operations. Anybody have any questions on that or anything? Sam, if you would go back to the first admin page, please. One other thing specifically I wanted to discuss and get input from Cindy. The other things we're already in the process of doing. One major change that I want to initiate is, well, let me give you a background first. Back in 2013, the position of assistant town manager was created. It was authorized by council. So the position was created, job description was created, both of those exist. And they also authorized it being placed in the pay structure. The only thing that didn't happen was it being formally included on the pay structure. And I can see why, because it's kind of a complicated scenario in that it really was not intended to be a standalone position. At the time it was created, I was the police chief and I was appointed assistant town manager. At that time, I was given an 11% raise to go along with the additional responsibility. And that's as far as it got, because a little over 6 months after that, I became the interim town manager, and then shortly thereafter, the town manager. So I've, by choice, haven't filled that position. It really was, the idea was that one of the key administrators, someone in that admin 4 level, would assume those responsibilities. And frankly, with everything we started working on and doing, people had more than enough on their plate. Fire chief has acted as acting town manager if I was out of town or something like that. But there's no ongoing day-to-day responsibilities associated with that. When the special projects and compliance manager position was created, I said from the beginning that was the role that I wanted to see develop into someone who could take on that assistant town manager job description as well. But obviously anticipated that taking some time. That time has passed. And for those of you that don't know, Sam Ewan is that person. So I want to move forward with doing that, and mention it during budget discussions, actually put a little additional money in there to start the process this year, but really need to wash out how exactly we handle that pay structure scenario.
So just for clarification, the position exists, there just isn't a pay structure for it?
Right. The position exists, there's a job description for it, and it's intended to be held in conjunction with another position. It's not a standalone position. And I know what was done when I was appointed to that position, but ultimately it was never documented or formally added to the pay structure. If that practice was to continue, then I think we determine what percentage increase that needs to be, and at least make a note in that admin 4 slot that appointment as assistant town manager carries whatever increase. Or do we look at creating an additional slot where my position would move to admin 6 and would create an admin 5 that slots this person in somewhere else. That, in this scenario, that might work fine, but in a case like mine, when that person is also the police chief, I think it needs to be clear that both of those positions exist. So I'm just looking for some advice on how to best handle that.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So when the assistant manager position was created in 2013, it wasn't meant to be a standalone position.
Correct.
And so what we're looking at, what's being proposed is that it is a standalone position, correct? Or is it just now going to be compliance manager, assistant town manager?
Right. If I make that appointment, he will maintain the responsibilities of both of those positions. So we'll be adding day-to-day administrative supervisory responsibilities and so forth to his current role.
One way that you might, just as an idea to throw out there, is when it's additional responsibilities but not a standalone position, you can look at adding on a differential, and that gives you the flexibility. You know, if you take the person out of the picture and you're just thinking about the organization and what those positions are going to look like, if you set it up as a differential, like now, it makes really good sense. You know, I'm assuming you've groomed, you know, and it makes sense to have it tagged in with the special projects and compliance manager. But at some point down the road, just like you came up through as police chief and then ended up with those additional responsibilities, if you do it as instead of separating it out of your existing pay structure, if you come up with that differential amount, and then, you know, you can tag that, like you said, as a special note. And then in the future, it could be tagged onto any one of those admin 4 positions as that, you know, percentage differential. So that's one way you could handle it without major changes to your pay structure. And it would give you the flexibility in the future to tag it onto any of those admin 4 positions.
And I think that's, you hit on something that's really been the motivation for me holding off on appointing someone to this position, because I think it's something, if once you put somebody in that position, you need to be comfortable with the fact that they will remain there. And this also gives us the opportunity to do something we've never done for the town manager's position, and that's succession planning. Ultimately, when I leave, it's 100% the council's decision as to who they choose to put in that position. But I think that it's my job to at least try to make that a no-brainer. And this puts us in a position to continue to move towards that process. You know, we have, and the selection isn't something that necessarily have to discuss with you guys, but I think I don't mind explaining the rationale, and that's been it, is how do we take advantage of having that position and make sure we get the right person in there and set up the possibility for positive succession planning. And we're in a position where we have someone who's has over 3 years in his position, has a law degree, and just finished the training required to be a certified municipal finance officer. We just never had an opportunity like this to set the groundwork for the future, and that's why I want to try to move forward with it. But I want to do it appropriately, and that's where advice in this situation is going to be helpful.
I guess my confusion comes from my notes from 2019 have the specials project manager, we discussed this position, that was the succession plan. So we didn't discuss this assistant town manager position at that time, because to my understanding, you had already kind of laid it out as the position that it is now.
Right, that is the position that was created, and at that time, and when I discussed it with council, you know, I've said all along that I wanted to see that position grow into what would become the, you know, the obvious succession scenario.
So you're talking about when you first created the special projects and compliance manager, you always looked at that as a succession plan. Or last year, you looked at that as being the succession plan to bring him into the assistant manager. And I guess this doesn't really matter to the conversation tonight, but I'm just trying to make sure that I fully understand, you know, kind of how this, you know, how this came about and like the procedures leading into this and up to this point, just to ensure openness and, you know, that kind of all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and that sort of thing. So I guess what my question was was the special compliance or the special projects and compliance manager always supposed to work into the succession plan from the beginning of that creation of that position?
I think I've been very clear with council through all the discussions that I recall that I would like to see it evolve in that direction.
So are we kind of talking about duplicate job descriptions right now? Because it sounds like we already have this position filled, and so we're just tacking on what he's already doing.
Right.
Because the position actually exists. So we're like, okay, you're already doing it, so we're going to give you the title now?
No, there will be additional responsibilities.
Do you have that job description up by any chance? Or available?
Or which one? Well, no, we don't.
For the assistant town manager.
See how quickly we
Sorry, I don't have that available to pull up. I'm sorry.
I think having that would help us kind of understand a little bit more what that position entails, so we can make a good decision on the financial aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. We will get that out to you guys. Sam, if I email that to you, could you pull it up? Or is that going to be too complicated?
No, sir, I can do that.
You see how quickly we can do this and then I'll move on to something else in the process.
Maybe I can ask a question on the firefighter pay structure as you were talking about it. If that's okay, or if you want to wait until are you okay with that point if I ask you questions? All right. So you were talking about like they go from P1 to P2, depending upon the different level, like within the year. If there is a cost of living raise in that same year, do they get both raises?
No. If the only time they would get a raise other than what the step is from P1 to P2 or P2 to market is if the actual scale is adjusted. If we do a 5% market adjustment on the scale as a whole, then they would go up. But they don't get cost of living raises at the same time they get the step raises. The steps are ballpark of about 5%. So they will pretty much always exceed anything that's going to be a cost of living raise.
Yeah. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're going between the steps because of their achievements and commitments.
Say that again?
They're going from like P1 to P2
Right.
because of their achievement and commitment to Signal Mountain Fire Department or whatever department. But I have fire pulled up. That, I mean, if the national average is 2.1% cost of living increase in that year, then their step between P1 and P2 for their achievement, for their commitment, isn't 5% because the cost of living also went up, I guess, is what I'm thinking. And maybe I need to think this through a little bit more, but like, I don't know. Is that the same with all the departments or just the fire department?
No, that's the same with everybody. Now, in most departments, you'll either come in at minimum or P1.
Yeah.
Because there's not a required certification like there is with firemen and policemen. But then the process for moving up is the same.
Okay.
Just for clarification, they are getting like yearly cost of living raises, or what's it been lately?
The town employees that have made it to market have been getting cost of living or market adjustments each year. Those that are below market are working their way through the steps. So it's kind of a combination system where the first period of employment here until you hit market is structured on steps, a step each year based on your anniversary or your certification date. Once you get there, then you switch over and the raises or cost of living or market adjustments.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble pulling that up with several other things open.
I move that we table the discussion on the special projects and compliance manager. Well, I should say, the assistant town manager description until the next meeting, and request that we receive the special projects and compliance manager job description as well as the assistant town manager job description.
I second that motion.
Joe's muted. Is there any other discussion on that? And I did just get it pulled up and I'm sending it to Sam, but
you all can let me know if you'd still like to see it during this meeting or if you prefer just hold off.
I'd like to see the other one as well, because I'm hearing a couple of different things, and I think the idea of having that a job description that helps somebody really straddle between career ladders isn't a great idea, and it probably could be used in a couple of different areas in town. And I would just like to see the job description, the manager's job description, then side by side with that assistant town manager job description.
We'll just go ahead and we'll hold off on that and send that out tonight or in the morning.
In thinking through the compensation piece of it, it might also be helpful to kind of know the percent of time that the incumbent is using for each of those different job descriptions as well. So, you know, do the additional duties that are assigned as the assistant town manager, do they take up 25% of the incumbent's time, or is this something that's 50% of the job? That helps, you know, sort of think through the process of how much of a you know, a differential rate should be added in order to make it, you know, make sense.
Okay. We'll get those out.
Should we do a roll call vote on that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I guess that's my job now. Angie Bandy,
Yes.
Elizabeth Baker,
Yes.
Joe Dirk, hey Joe, are you still on?
Joe, if you can hear us, you're muted.
We'll come back. Catherine Corley,
Yeah, I've got back in. I'm not as familiar with Zoom as I should be, so I'm back on to be able to say something.
is that a yes or a no for the motion?
It's a yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then Catherine Corley,
It's a yes for me too.
and it's a yes for Callan Pearson.
Okay, the last item we have, personnel policy, an overview. I sent out our most current document as well as some fairly recent changes, resolutions associated with that, just so you guys can look at it and be somewhat familiar with it. Over the last few years, we have kept a kind of a running log of potential changes that we need to make. And really kind of want to see how you guys want to address that section at a time or whatever. Sam, do you have that document too, Sam?
Yes, sir. Sure do.
Could you, it's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of page 24, 25, the college degree bonus. I just want to give you guys kind of an example of the kind of things that we've run into and things you don't, there it is, you don't anticipate. So the college degree bonus, regular full-time employees with 1 or more years of service with the town who have a college degree that is not a job requirement for his or her position, job related or not, from the accredited college or university will be awarded a college degree bonus at the end of each calendar year as follows. And then the next page has the amounts. for as long as I can remember, these have been paid out along with the longevity bonus and the Christmas bonus right before Christmas, which I think is fairly common that you do those things before Christmas so folks have them. But that's always been the practice, as far as I know. This past year, we had an employee that got a bachelor's degree in January or February, I believe. And we weren't, I guess we were aware of it, but we didn't have the documentation, so it didn't get in the mix for the bonuses. So that caused him to ask about it. And the rest of the story is that he also got a master's degree in November and quit at the end of December, but was still employed here at the time the bonuses went out. Now, assuming the rationale is that the town sees benefit to that degree, and he held a bachelor's degree for pretty much the whole year, and he was here when we paid the bonuses out, my position was, well, I can see that, but I certainly don't see paying for a master's degree that he held for 3 weeks. So I conferred with the town attorney, who agreed with me completely, except that that's not what the policy says. So just a prime example of one of those scenarios you would never imagine coming up, but at some point it does, and you realize the policy is not exactly what it needs to be, so that we need to state that something to the effect that the degree needs to be held for a year prior to the degree bonus going into effect, and that well, in this case, he was employed at the time the bonus was paid. But anyway, obviously we need to do a little bit of work on that, and there's things like that that have come up periodically. And for a while, we did have trouble getting quorums for the personnel committee, and then had a lack of members. So we have been just kind of keeping a note of all of those, but would like very much to start addressing those. So I wanted to get your input on how you would like to see that done. I would assume perhaps that a draft document with current and proposed language for you to consider incrementally might be the way to approach it, but I don't want to make those assumptions. So you tell me what you would like to see and how you'd like to start eating the elephant.
I would think your suggestion with doing the current and proposed would be able to compare what exists today as to, maybe the changes and what those changes would be. So that may be a good way of doing it.
Okay, if there are no other preferences, then we'll start working on that, and basically just cover what we can in as logical a format as possible, either just working through the manual front to back, or if there are related items that may not be adjacent to each other, we may pull some together that way, but we'll do it as what seems to be as logically as possible, and then just send it out at least a week or so ahead of the next meeting and give you time to review it, and then have it on as agenda items for discussion.
So just just to clarify again, you're basically going to go through the whole personnel policy and do a red line for us to review? Or are you looking at just specific items, like the college bonus?
There are specific items, but there are quite a few of them.
Okay.
So we'll go through a good portion of the policy.
Okay. Then yeah, I think just getting us a red line would be helpful.
Okay. One other question I have really relates to the meetings. I know I've told everyone about what the standing meeting schedule was, and everybody said you were good with that. Most all of the committees, town council, and everything have evolved into most are meeting at 6 or 6:30. From the staff perspective, you're the volunteers, you're giving your time, we'll do whatever you need to do. But I wanted to at least let you know that most of the committees do meet earlier. If that is better for y'all, we can make that adjustment and do that. If 7 is the preference, then we can certainly do that as well.
Either one works for me.
I have no objections either way, either.
Yeah, 6 or 7 is fine. Yeah, quite flexible.
And the same.
So if either works for most of us, well, we haven't heard from Joe, I shouldn't jump in, but definitely we should think about making it as easy as possible for the staff if either work for us.
I agree.
Joe, you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I've got so used to 6:30 because I cover the Walden story for Signal Mountain Mayor, so that's would be my only preference, only because I'm so used to it. But whatever everybody else wants, it would be agreeable to me.
Oh, that's really the only preference indicated. So we want to split the difference and say 6:30.
Sounds good.
Okay, good enough. All right, I appreciate it. I don't have anything else. I anticipated that this would largely be kind of an introductory and orientation thing, is the kind of things that we're dealing with, and get a feel for what you guys want to see and how you want to proceed. So I appreciate you walking through that. And now that we have that information, hopefully we'll be able to give you what you need in advance of meetings, so we can start checking off the boxes and getting what we need to get done. Does anyone else have anything?
Boyd, I just have a couple of quick questions. One, I was wondering if there were exit interviews that were done, either when somebody is retiring or leaving for another position.
Generally, but not terribly formal.
Okay.
I mean, anytime someone leaves, the department head talks to them about any issues they've had or anything like that. And we really haven't seen any sort of trend or issue other than pay and sometimes it's not even within the same field. We've had recently had a police officer left and went to an accounting firm. So it's just that's the main issue. But yes, we do talk to them and try to identify any other issues that there may be that we want to give some focus to.
And you had, well, I know the admin, there's some folks who have been in admin for a number of years. And some of the other places where there's more turnover, if you just had to guess, what would you say about the average tenure is for a police officer or for a firefighter, since we were looking at those pay scales earlier?
Far better than it used to be.
Okay.
I would say, this is just off the top of my head. I can obviously get that for you. Off the top of my head, for police, for the officers' positions, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years. Fire will be a little more difficult. Just a few years ago, we significantly increased the department when we built the new fire station. I would say it's a little less than that.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's just off the top of my head. I can get that very quickly for you and give you specific detail if you would like it.
Just having a general idea is fine. I wasn't sure if we were talking a decade or 6 months, or sounds like somewhere in between. So
Right.
thank you.
Right. And we have seen over the last few years, luckily we've had some really great folks. But when you do start to see more turnover, if it is in the mid-management level, when you have sergeants and lieutenants that are leaving, and you have folks with relatively short tenure beneath them, that can be a bit of a challenge. And we have seen some promotions of folks that are fairly short-term employees. But again, luckily we had some really, really solid folks that we were comfortable with, and it's ultimately been a good scenario. But you have to look at that too, as kind of where the tenure of your mid-level supervisors sometimes tends to trend down as well. Anybody else have any other questions? Or I'll be happy to. We're asking you guys for help. So if there's any information or anything you need from me to help us, I hope you will certainly let me know what it is. All right, Joe, with that, if there's nothing else, I will defer to you for adjournment.
Okay, is there any special way that we adjourn the meeting, or just say that we've adjourning it? Is there a vote on it, or anything like that?
Generally, I believe the chair can adjourn a meeting, and often they also ask for a motion to adjourn. If you have a motion to adjourn, it is the only one that does not require a second.
It doesn't require what? I'm sorry?
It does not require a second.
Okay. Well, I offer to adjourn the meeting.
Right.
So should we have a vote?
No, it's not necessary.
Okay.
So we'll get this stuff out, and absent a change in plans, we'll look for the first Tuesday in February at 6:30. And in the meantime, if there's anything else you guys want from me, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.